killer, Sheriff, and all of our Cajun kinfolk. I promise you.
Hello and welcome to another bad movie review. This time we are looking at Gator Bait. This is a 1973 film, rated R, runs about an hour and 28 minutes. Starring the lovely and taken too soon Claudia Jennings. So we open up with this woman piloting a boat around the swamp because they really needed to stretch this one out. We meet Officer Billy Boy and his friend Ben, and they are out to catch Desiree as she is poaching gators, and they're sitting around eating Cracker Jacks and lurking menacingly, yucking it up while she drives around in her boat. Now this goes on for a little while, longer than it probably should, but their cunning plan is to either arrest her or coerce her into sex with them. So you can kind of see where this is gonna go. We end up with a boat chase that goes on way too long and is weirdly slow, but not slow enough you get bored. It just seems like it kind of drags and it's not as exciting as it probably could have been. Somebody actually says stop in the name of the law and drop your britches, and that's 7 minutes in, so this is gonna be a saucy film, right? Nah, don't get your hopes up. Now, although she is dressed like Sheena of the jungle, she is still piloting a boat for reasons. There's a lot of inconsistencies here. It's just best to kind of roll with it. Now, to escape these pursuers, she takes a bag of snakes that she's collected and throws them just because. And it seems to work because the snakes get out, and immediately Deputy Billy Boy pulls his revolver out and fires 10 shots at them. How he has 10 shots in a revolver? I don't know. It's not a LeMat, which only holds 9, so it's definitely some sort of magically reloading gun. And you can tell that they recycled some of the footage from a different camera angle because you see him draw his gun a second time. He didn't have 2 guns. He has 1 revolver, and he pulls it out of his holster, fires a bunch of times, and then we see from a different camera angle him pulling his revolver out and shooting the snakes again. Well, unfortunately, Ben doesn't make it because there's a little whoopsie there. And all the shooting in the boat has led to the boat sinking, which happens off screen because they couldn't afford to actually sink a boat. So of course Billy Boy has to come up with a clever excuse for why there's no boat and his friend is missing. So he tells his dad, the sheriff, that Desiree was behind everything. Now the sheriff is mad that they were out bothering this Cajun lady because she is from a long lineage of Cajun crocodile hunters or something. I don't know, it's a little vague. But he quickly frames her for the death, and that sets everything into motion where it's going to get even weirder and rapier than it already has. So we cut over to a farm where a man named TJ is whipping his son for trying to get busy with his sister because this is a hicksploitation film, so every redneck is an idiot and a lustful pervert. So you just have to kind of accept that with films like this. Much like Killer Instinct was, hicksploitation is all about making everybody look stupid that is in any way related to being rural or from the swamp area. And of course that means the sheriff and Billy Boy have to go out there and explain to TJ that one of his sons is dead and that this lady did it. Well, of course he wants vengeance and blood, so he grabs his 2 sons, including the one he was just whipping, who apparently is just fine now, even though a bullwhip was just smacked across his back half a dozen times. TJ, Pete, and Leroy join up with the sheriff and his kid, and they go out into the swampy yonder, and there's a lot of overdubbing. There is an amazing amount of overdubbing in this film where they just plaster some voiceovers onto a scene that was clearly not filmed in the bayou. It was clearly done in a studio, and it is throughout this film. Just about every character has a voiceover at some point, and it's borderline obnoxious, but also kind of funny at the same time because it's so out of element with the scenery. It's too quiet. You don't get those ambient sounds of the bayou. This is when we learn that Desiree has a younger brother and sister that don't look anything like her. She's a redhead. They're obviously dark-haired, and the brother's a mute. His name is Big T, and her sister's name is Julie, and they have a little shanty out in the bayou, out in the middle of nowhere, where they seem to have a very simple life where no bras exist. Now, Desiree is going out to go hunting for some gators because apparently the two fellas that wanted to have their way with her made her lose her traps or snares, and she wasn't able to get any gator, so she's got to go out on a mission deeper into the swamp, leaving her brother and sister to kind of fend for themselves for a few days, and that seems to be kind of a normal thing here. Well, Pete ends up accidentally spotting Julie when he goes out to do number 2, and the posse closes in. Things get kind of wacky from there as a attempted violent assault turns into a murder, and then revenging has to happen, and there's some gross armpit hair. That's icky. Ladies, shave your pits. It's gross. It's around this time that Billy Boy admits to his dad that he's the one that accidentally killed Ben. And of course, they're not about to tell TJ Bracken that because he's a loose cannon with a bullwhip, and he would absolutely kill Billy Boy. So Sheriff Joe Bob is going to protect his son, and that ends up backfiring horribly on pretty much everybody. We do learn the sheriff and Desiree's mom had a thing, but her mom seemed to be kind of a town bicycle type, and we learn where the name Gator Bait comes from because apparently her dad would tie her up and dunk her in the swamp and use her as bait for the gators so he could hunt them, and that's pretty messed up. But there's a lot of messed up stuff here because this movie is filled with amorality all over the place. Nobody has any problem killing. Somebody gets left behind injured, and obviously he's gonna die, and it just kind of goes that way. Like, nobody seems particularly upset except TJ in one scene. So there's really no problem with all the hunting and murdering that's going on, and you just kind of have to accept that. Now, this movie was written and directed by Beverly Sebastian, co-directed by Ferd Sebastian, her husband. If those names sound familiar, they also did Rocktober Blood, as well as several other movies. And this movie was one of the movies that got me into B movies. You see the box picture and you're like, wow, that's kind of a sexy picture. It looks like it could be a fun thrill ride with B movie boobies and all that. Not really. There are 3 plots in here, but they're not a very long scene. There's probably a couple others where you could glimpse a little bit of plot, but they're all very quick scenes. There's one taillight scene as well, and even though this wasn't a horror movie, I did do the body count on it, and it is a rockin' 6. So pretty high body count for a movie like this without a large cast and clearly done on a very low budget. Also, Desiree's shotgun seems to have infinite ammo, so that's a perk. There's so many flaws with this film, it would take me 2 or 3 hours to analyze every scene and point out all the flaws, but I'm way too lazy for that, so you just get the highlights. The weapons with infinite ammo is probably the most notable. The overdubbing is sometimes very noticeable, and the fact that you don't actually see that many gators is a little surprising because almost every gator you see is blatantly, obviously stock footage. But overall, it's a pretty fun movie. It does have a few slow parts, but they're not boring per se, they're just meandering a little bit. And before it can get too boring to where you're annoyed, it does start to kind of pick up again. But this is largely just people wandering around the swamp looking for this girl and having some interpersonal drama at the same time. And like I said, all these people are pretty amoral, so it's really not hard to feel indifferent when they get killed. And you'll notice that Claudia Jennings does not have a lot of lines in this because much like just about everybody else in the film, her accent is hilariously bad. She is trying to do a Cajun accent and it's pretty terrible. And probably the standout performance in here was actually Douglas Dirkson, who played Leroy. He played crazy very, very well. And his character actually had good motivation. There may have been some previous incident where he did not come out on the better end in the pelvic region. I'll just leave that one to your imagination until you see the film. But a lot of the people in this film, like Douglas Dirkson, are recognizable from a lot of TV and movie bit parts. Most of them are either background actors or supporting cast. Bill Thurman, who played the sheriff, had a part in The Last Picture Show, Silverado, and Close Encounters of the Third Kind. So he's somebody that you've seen in something else, most likely, if you've seen a lot of movies. And same with most of the other cast members. So there's a good solid B-movie cast working with a pretty awkward script script. The dialogue's a little hit and miss at times. It's not the worst I've ever seen, but it's definitely nowhere near the best, even for a B movie. And the cinematography obviously was a little hit and miss as well, but it did have some cool shots that almost looked like comic book panels. So I get what they were going for here, but it's just such a weirdly put together movie that it looked like a lot of the takes were just one and done. So the acting is a little off at times, but it's not the worst. It's good solid exploitation cheese. And yeah, it's definitely making all of these people in Louisiana look like they're a bunch of stupid rednecks, but that's part of the charm of the film, is that it's so out of touch with reality. And Desiree had plenty of opportunities to kill these guys, and they probably would have died in other ways too, being out there for so long, because they make poor decisions throughout the film. But the scenery looked good. It was a fun movie. Claudia Jennings is always spectacular to see. It's a shame she died so young. So I am going to recommend this just because it is just a crazy action adventure film that is sort of a cross between a lazy version of I Spit on Your Grave mixed with Deliverance, but without all the sex in either one. Now, there is an alternate version of this in the UK where they cut out about 3 minutes of the film to reduce one of the murder sequences, which is pretty disturbing, so I understand why they cut it down, but it really kind of hurts the film, so you have to be aware of that you want to find the uncut US version, which most of the time is listed as a director's special edition, and the only real difference seems to be that it gives you a language option to put it in Spanish, and it has an interview with the directors as well, but that interview really didn't seem to add much of anything to the film, but still, it's a nice quality print, so I'm happy I picked it up on DVD. And like I said, I'm going to recommend this. It's a fun film that just doesn't make a lot of sense. It has all the problems you would expect in a B movie, so it's a lot of fun to watch with friends and tear apart and just have a good time eating popcorn and watching this goofy B movie. So I am looking forward to watching the sequel, Gator Bait 2 Cajun Justice. But in the meantime, that's going to do it for this one. Thank you so much for listening and supporting the channel. If you enjoyed the episode, please hit the like button and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss future reviews. If you'd like to help the channel out in other ways, links are in the description to various support methods. And as always, we hope to see you on the next one.